Hello everybody, here we are today doing a second round series preview between the Colorado Avalanche and the Dallas Stars. So before we get started with it, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me or hockey, whatever the case may be. That being said, let's get on into it. So of course we have to kick it off with how exactly we got here. We got here with the Colorado Avalanche having a really good season when they finished with 107 points. They were competing for the Central Division, ultimately ended up falling to third where they would play the second place Winnipeg Jets in the first round, and they beat them handedly in 5 games. As for the Dallas Stars, they would win the Central Division with 113 points and be the team that is top of the Western Conference, while also going on and winning their first round matchup against the defending champions, the Vegas Golden Knights, in 7 games. So during the course of the regular season, the Colorado Avalanche scored the most goals in the league, while also scoring at the highest rate. That right there is a concern. But on top of that too, when they played the Dallas Stars in 4 regular season games, they scored 20 goals, with just one of those being an empty netter. So that is, again, another problematic thing. And then when you look at the 4 games that they played against the Stars, their lowest scoring game came on April 7th when they scored 4 goals. So they can go out there and get a lot of goals on the Stars in a hurry. And during the regular season series, when Jake Ottinger played in 3 of these games, he had a sub-900 save percentage in all 3 of those. So again, your starting goalie having a hard time playing a team that they're going to be playing against in the second round kind of just, fuels the fire, if you will. And looking at what they did against the Winnipeg Jets, they scored 28 goals, scored 5 goals or more in all 5 of those games, with just 4 of them being empty netters. That is problematic. When you look at it too, they had 8 players average a point per game in that series. I believe they had 6 players that averaged over a point per game. And then you got to realize Jonathan Drouin didn't even play in this series, and he is kind of up in the air for the status right now. But if he goes out there and is able to play in this series as well, do you have to worry about just another problem? As the Avs during the regular season, good against Dallas and good against the Jets, the Stars have to find a way to cool this Avalanche offense down. And then the second talking point is, can some of the Dallas Stars goal scorers that cooled off in the first round end up getting hot in the second round? So looking at the Stars in the regular season, they had the 3rd highest goals for per 60 in the league. That's a good thing. We know that they can be a team that can score a lot of goals, just like Colorado. And they had 8 goal scorers that scored 20 or more goals during the regular season. However, in the first round against the Vegas Golden Knights, they only had 2 players out of that bunch that scored 2 goals or more in that series, and then 6 of them ended up scoring 1 goal or less in this series. Now, I am going to give Mason Marchment a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, as he ended up playing just 2 games, but looking at guys like Joe Pavelski and Tyler Seguin, they combined for 0 goals in this series on 27 shots, 21 of those being Tyler Seguin's. And then looking at a guy like Ropa Hintz, he ended up having 1 goal in this series, but it was just an empty netter. Jamie Benn scored 1 goal, 2 in this series, and his was in the very first game of the series, so games 2 through game 7, when you really are hoping to just get anybody to help when some of these guys aren't scoring. Ben's not able to find the back of the net, and just kind of contributes to what we saw in the first round despite them winning. And I'm not going to lie, some of these guys, in fact, all of them, I think had good numbers, especially at 5-on-5 for the series over the entire span, but they just can't afford to get in a barn burner right now with the Avalanche after the Avs look so good in the first round, if they're going to stay cold. Now, with them being able to play some power play minutes, with some of these guys being top names and seeing all those things happen, you'd have to imagine that some of them are going to heat up a little bit. And again, when we have 8 guys that can score that many goals, some of them are probably bound to be able to turn things around at some point. However, you have to look at this too and say, if some of these players, or a good chunk of them, end up having another bad series, you already know they're going to be looking at them after the playoffs and saying, oh, they contributed to why we weren't able to get the job done, as they ended up going cold for 14 games or something like that. But again, some of them will probably turn it around, and they're going to need to if they want to win this series against the Avs. And then the final storyline for me is rest versus rust. I don't typically really like this argument, but during the playoffs, you do have a little bit of a case here, as you see some teams end up winning their series before this in very quick fashion, while other teams having to go the distance, playing a lot of overtime games and things like that. And in this scenario, you have the Colorado Avalanche that last played on April 30th, with the series, I believe, starting May 7th for them in Dallas. They ended up getting a week off and didn't have any game. I believe they ended up going in overtime during their series, and they are able to get some of their guys to be able to rest up, especially as everybody's probably dealing with injuries. Meanwhile, Dallas ended up having to play a full 7 games. One of those games did go into overtime, and a lot of these were close games where, there could be some hitting involved, and just a matchup between them and Vegas where they aren't fond of each other with playoff history. And you can kind of see the argument where Colorado would have the edge as they were hot, and they were able to heal their bodies a little bit and then prepare more I know obviously the series didn't end until late for Dallas and Vegas, but they still were able to get a mindset of what they wanted to do against each team, and we will have to see how that works out, because if you are more of a fan of the rust mindset where a team ends up getting a lot of time off, whereas another team is able to just, flip the switch and have a game relatively close after their series ends, you might think that the team that got a lot of time off is going to be slow. Alexander Georgiev is somebody that comes to mind here, as he ended up having a good series between games 2 and games 5. Game 1, of course, was that game that got away from him in the team. So I guess if you see that, you could say, well, they could start off slow, and if this series ends up going the distance, maybe the team that is able to just have one night off after they ended up finishing off a series is going to have the edge. And I will say one thing that is very good for the Stars: Game 7 was in Dallas, so they're going to be hosting the Avalanche in Dallas. They're not going to have a flight back, and they could use some of that momentum maybe to grab the first game or two of this series. Although if Colorado goes out there and plays well early on, that whole argument kind of goes out the window. And this Avalanche team that is a championship contender and a championship caliber, I'm not really too concerned about them being able to go out there and start slow or start hot. They're going to play well, and they're going to make it competitive early on. So overall, this series is going to get hyped up because of where these two teams sit and how they've done in recent years. The Avalanche are looking to get their second championship, whereas Dallas is looking to get their first. And I think that some people could be kind of getting where they're looking farther in the future than they should, as, maybe Colorado fans are saying, oh, maybe we'll get a rematch between us and Edmonton in the conference final where we beat them in 2022. Or if you're a Stars fan, you say, well, maybe we play the Canucks and show why we were the best team in the West in the conference final. But I would say that the reality is most fans are going to be looking at this series as two teams that ended up having good years this year, that have been around each other in the division before, and could very well see the Stanley Cup winner coming out of this series. And that's kind of where my eyes are in this match. So for this series, I'm going to be picking the Colorado Avalanche in 7 games, and I know that seems a little bit hypocritical from me as I picked the Stars to win the division with my bracket pick, and I think they could still go out there and do that. However, I thought Winnipeg was going to be able to push the Avs a little bit farther and maybe even win. And right now, from what I saw with the Avalanche and what they're able to do against a team that could have a good goalie and a defense that didn't allow a lot of goals, and how they're able to just breeze past them, I kind of feel like that's where we are again. And the Stars are able to score more goals in Winnipeg, yes, but some of these guys are cold, and I feel like now I'm at the spot where I am just leaning heavily towards Colorado because they've been there and done that, and then now they have a little bit of rest, whereas Dallas could be worn down with a lot of veterans, and that's kind of where I see it. And then in the playoffs, you do have to pick an upset in every round or two, maybe even more in each round, and I went 6-2 in the first round, and I don't even feel like this is really an upset, as both teams had good years, more just so that I do see Colorado as a team that will win the Cup, or very well could. And I think that if either team ends up moving on, I see them probably as being able to go on to the Stanley Cup final. Whether or not they win it, I don't really know, but this series is probably going to be the one you should pay a lot of attention to. But of course, seeing the Vancouver and Edmonton series, I'm going to be watching out for that one too. Anyway, what are your thoughts? Who do you think will win, and in how many games? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Also, please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. Everybody stay safe. Have a great night. And you go hockey all right. Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.